I found out my mother had spent most of my life quietly sabotaging every chance I had to get out of our little town when I was 38 years old. Standing in the attic of my parents' house in South Carolina, sweating through a t-shirt and trying to be a good daughter while my dad lay in a rehab facility relearning how to walk after a stroke, and I kicked open a dusty Rubbermaid bin labeled old school stuff and saw, on top of a pile of yearbooks and crumpled participation ribbons, a thick stack of envelopes with my name on them in a dozen different fonts and logos I'd never seen before, all addressed to me, all sliced open neatly along the top and then shoved into the bottom of a box like someone hoped cardboard and insulation could smother the sound of an entire life rerouting. I picked one up at random. The return address said Admissions Office, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My stomach did a weird flip because UNC had been my dream school at 17. I used to fall asleep with their brochure under my pillow like some kids do with boy band posters. I sent off the application, never heard anything, and assumed the way my mother had said with a sympathetic shake of her head, "Honey, it's very competitive, you probably just didn't get in. Better to stay realistic and look at community college." I tore the envelope the rest of the way open with clumsy fingers that already knew the punchline and still prayed for a different joke. "Dear Miss Walker," it said in that formal serif font I'd always secretly wanted to see my name printed in. "We are pleased to offer you admission to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for the fall 2004 term." I didn't read the rest. My vision tunneled. The attic swam. I grabbed another envelope. "University of Georgia. Congratulations." Another. A small liberal arts college in Virginia I'd only applied to because the brochure had a pretty campus. "We are delighted to inform you." An out-of-state scholarship I'd completely forgotten about applying for. "Your application for the Palmetto Scholars Award has been selected." The dates were all the same window, January to April of my senior year of high school, for 5-6 different schools. "All pleased and delighted, and we are thrilled to offer." All addressed to me. All opened in someone else's hands. All hidden in a bin above the laundry room, while I sat at the kitchen table crying over rejection that apparently never existed. My mother's voice floated up from downstairs. "Sam? Did you find that old box of Christmas decorations? The ladies from church are bringing a casserole later. We need the good dishes." I stared at the stack of envelopes in my hands and very calmly said, "Yeah, Mom, I found something." When I came down with the letters, she was at the sink rinsing out the coffee pot like it was any other Tuesday, like my entire life wasn't written in black and white on stationery she'd intercepted. I laid the stack on the kitchen table between us. "What is this?" I asked. Her eyes flicked to the envelopes, then back to the coffee pot. "Oh, that old stuff," she said too quickly. "I kept some of your high school things. You were always so smart, you know I couldn't throw it away." I picked up the UNC letter and read the first line out loud. "We are pleased to offer you admission," I said, my voice going flatter with each word. "You told me I didn't get in." She dried her hands slowly. "You were very emotional that year," she said. "It was a very stressful time with your grandmother being sick and your brother's therapies. I didn't want you fixating on something that was never going to be practical for us." "Practical for us?" I repeated. "Or convenient for you?" She flinched just a little at the corner of her mouth. "Don't take that tone with me," she said. "You don't understand what it was like back then. We had one car. Your father's job at the plant was on shaky ground. Your brother had appointments 3 times a week. You wanted to run off to North Carolina like we hadn't spent 18 years building a life here." "I wanted to go to college," I said. "You told me I wasn't good enough." "I never said that," she insisted, hand flying to her chest like she was the wounded party. "I said those schools were long shots. I said not to pin all your hopes on one place." When we never heard back, I tried to cushion the blow. I held up another letter. "From Georgia," that I apparently got into. "And this one, and this one, and this scholarship. How many blows were you cushioning exactly?" Her face went blank, the way it does when she knows she's cornered and is already building a new story. "I opened them because you were at school," she said. You know how you were with bad news. You'd fall apart, refuse to eat, make yourself sick. I thought it would be better if I filtered them first. Filtered them? I said. You mean hid them? She didn't deny it. She just started wiping the same non-existent spot on the counter with the dish rag. You're exaggerating, she said, which is her favorite way of calling me a liar without using that word. We talked about this back then. We discussed your options. You agreed community college was the right choice. What I remembered was very different. I remembered sitting across from her at this same table, hands wrapped around a mug of instant coffee, hearing her say, "Honey, we have to be realistic. Those big schools, they want kids with perfect grades and big donations from their families. We're not that. You'll be rejected and humiliated. Better to stay home, go to the community college, help with your brother, then see what happens." I remembered crying, asking, "What if I didn't get rejected?" And her patting my hand and saying, "Then they would have sent a letter, wouldn't they?" Apparently they had. And she'd made sure I never saw them. For context, I grew up in a 3-bedroom ranch on the edge of a dying mill town. My dad worked at the paper plant until it shut down, then at an auto parts store, then finally selling cars. My mom stayed home for the kids, but also because she'd never finished high school, and the idea of going back to get a GED at my age embarrassed her. My little brother Josh was born with cerebral palsy. He uses a wheelchair and needs help with a lot of basic stuff. Our grandparents helped when they could, but it was mostly on us. And by us, I mean my mother, and by my mother, I mean me. From about 14 on, I was the default third parent. I did the cooking when Dad worked late. I changed Josh's feeding tubes and did his stretching exercises. I missed parties and sleepovers because your brother had a bad day, or someone has to help Grandma with her meds. My mother liked to say, God gave Josh to this family because he knew we'd be strong enough. But what she meant was, God gave Josh to this family so Sam can feel guilty about ever wanting anything else. I was still a good student, straight as AP classes honor roll. Teachers told me I could go somewhere. They circled scholarships in red pen and slipped extra applications into my backpack. Senior year, my guidance counselor, Mr. Patterson, pulled me aside after class. I've sent off your transcripts to 6 schools, he said. You've got a real shot. Just promise me you'll read everything that comes in the mail before anyone else does. Okay? At the time I thought he was being dramatic. Now I wonder if he'd already seen my mother hovering in the lobby after school, already heard her say things like, "We're not trying to push her into anything unrealistic." I went home, sat by the mailbox for weeks like a dog waiting for its owner. Nothing came, or so I thought. My mother would check the mail on her way back from the grocery store, flip through it at the curb, and by the time I got to the box after school, it was just bills and junk. "Nothing yet," she'd say. "Did you really think they'd rush to answer one little girl from Mill Grove?" Eventually, I gave up. I enrolled in the local community college because there was a campus bus that stopped near our house, and my mother said she needed the car for Josh's appointments. I commuted, came straight home every day, cooked dinner, studied between therapy sessions and church. Somewhere in there, between my associate's degree and Josh's increasing needs and Grandma's dementia, the idea of ever leaving just slipped away. I told myself I'd maybe transfer later. Later never came. Now, standing in that kitchen with a stack of proof that later could have been sooner, I felt like the floor had opened up under me. "This wasn't your decision to make," I said. "You didn't get to choose my life for me." "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped, the sweet martyr tone finally cracking. "Of course I did. I'm your mother. You were a child. You don't know what it was like trying to juggle everything. Your father working nights, Josh screaming with his muscle spasms, your grandmother wandering the yard at 3 in the morning. You wanted to run off to some college hours away and leave me to deal with all of it alone. I was 17, I said. That's what kids do. They leave. They grow up. Not in this family, she said. We take care of our own. I am our own, I said. So are you. So is Dad. So is Josh. That doesn't mean I was supposed to sacrifice the rest of my life, because you couldn't imagine another solution. I wish I could say that was the only box. It wasn't. Over the next week, in between hospital visits and meetings with my dad's physical therapist, I kept finding things. Emails printed out where they shouldn't have been, like copies of internship offers I'd never seen from my 20s. A letter from a state university saying, "We're sorry you've decided to decline our offer of admission. If your plans change," dated 3 days after I'd had a huge fight with my mother about how selfish it was to think about moving away when Josh was going through so much. A folder labeled Sam Opportunities in my mother's desk drawer full of flyers for study abroad, volunteer programs, jobs in other states. All with her notes in the margins, too far. Costs too much. Who will help with Jay? In the bottom of that drawer was the one that made me sit down on the floor. It was an email printed out in full color from a teaching hospital 2 hours away. I'd applied for a job there when I was 26, sick of my dead-end receptionist gig at the local insurance office. They offered me an interview. I remember getting a curt rejection email later that month and thinking, well, I guess I wasn't what they wanted. The printed email in my mother's drawer told a different story. "We're delighted you're still interested in the position," it said. "We received a voicemail from your mother explaining some of the challenges at home and your second thoughts about relocating. If you change your mind, we'd still love to meet you in person." I read that line 3 times. I had never called them. I had never told them I had second thoughts. My mother had, using my name, representing me as a fragile homebody too overwhelmed by family obligations to take a better job. I took that letter to my friend Denise, who works in HR. "Yeah, this happens more than you think," she said, frowning. "Parents calling about grown kids. We usually ignore it, but smaller places sometimes think they're being kind. It's messed up. Do you think I could call them now?" I asked. She looked at the date. "This is 10 years old," she said gently. "They're not going to remember it. And even if they did, it wouldn't change the fact that they think you decided not to come." That night I called my old guidance counselor. I half expected him to be dead or retired, but he picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Patterson?" I asked. "This is Samantha Walker. I graduated in '04. He hesitated. "Sam," he said. "With the long braid and the AP English award?" I laughed, a painful little sound. "That's me," I said. "I have a strange question. Do you remember my college applications?" He was quiet for a moment. "I do actually," he said slowly. "I remember thinking you were a lock for a couple of those state schools, and you had a decent shot at UNC. Why?" "Because I just found out I got in," I said. "My mom hid the letters." He sighed, a sound like he'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. "I suspected," he said. My throat closed. "You suspected?" I repeated. "And you didn't say anything?" "I tried," he said. "Your mother came in one afternoon in March, said there'd been a change in plans. She said your grandmother's health was declining, your brother's care was more intensive, and that you decided not to pursue out-of-state options. She brought a note she'd written and had you sign. You looked small. I asked if you were sure. You said, 'My family needs me.' Your mother answered all the other questions. After that, the letters started coming addressed to you care of your parents. When I asked if you'd heard back, she'd say, 'We'll let you know if there's any news.' School policy only let me push so far. You were technically an adult by then. I wish I'd done more." I hung up and sat in my car in the high school parking lot for an hour, staring at the faded paint on the gym walls, feeling like the ghost of my 17-year-old self was sitting in the passenger seat shaking her head at me. All those years I thought I'd just not been good enough, not bright enough, not special enough to get out. Turns out I'd been enough. I just wasn't allowed to know it. In the middle of all this, my dad was having his own crisis. The stroke hadn't killed him, but it had taken a chunk of his speech and most of the function of his right arm. The doctors talked about long-term care needs and modifying the home environment. My mother latched onto those phrases like a drowning woman to a life raft. He'll come home, she told every nurse who'd listen. Sam will move back in. We'll make it work. We're a family. She said it so confidently that half the staff started assuming I'd already agreed. One physical therapist even patted my shoulder and said, "You're a good daughter giving up your life like this," before I'd even had the chance to say, "I haven't agreed to anything." When I told my mother I wasn't moving back permanently, she stared at me like I'd slapped her. "Of course you are," she said. "You can't leave me alone with this. Your brother, your father, the house. It's too much." "I can help," I said. "I can come on weekends. I can hire an aide with my own money. We can look into disability services." "We can't afford that," she snapped. "And I'm not having strangers in my house. You're the logical one to come home. You don't have a husband, you don't have children, your job is just office work. You can transfer to the branch here." "I have a life," I said. "I have friends. I have a routine that doesn't revolve around this house. That life is built on sacrifices we made," she said, eyes flashing. "Who do you think watched your brother so you could work? Who do you think paid for your car insurance? You owe us. You stole my mail," I said. "You called employers and told them I couldn't handle stress. You made sure I never had the chance to build anything outside these walls. If anyone owes anyone, it's not me." That's when she pulled out her trump card. "Your grandmother would be ashamed," she said. "We took you in when your daddy's hours got cut. We fed you. We kept a roof over your head. And now when we need you, you're bringing up old grievances like a spoiled child." "Grandma left her house to me," I said quietly. "She told me she wanted me to sell it and use the money to get out, to finally have something of my own." My mother's mouth tightened. "We talked to the lawyer," she said. "He agreed it made more sense for us to handle the sale. You've never sold a house. You don't know what you're doing." "I know where the deed is," I said. "And I know my name is on it now. The judge made that very clear." That's when she said it. The thing that snapped something I didn't even know was still hanging on. "If you walk away now," she said, voice low and vicious, "don't come back. Don't think you can swoop in later when we're old and dying and pretend to be the good daughter. You either step up now or you're dead to us." "You made that choice for me a long time ago," I said. "The day you decided your need for help was more important than my right to know I'd earned a way out." I left with a suitcase and the box of letters. I wish I could tell you I never looked back. I did. I looked back every single day in small ways. When Josh called me crying because Mom was snapping at him more than usual, I arranged respite care through the state over her objections. When the social worker came for the assessment and my mother glared at me over the paperwork, I almost caved. When Dad had a setback and landed back in the hospital, I drove down 3 weekends in a row, did the laundry, fixed the leaky sink, cooked dinners and left freezer meals, because no matter how angry I was, the part of me that had been raised to be useful couldn't bear to see the chaos. On one of those trips, I came across another envelope in Dad's dresser drawer, tucked behind some socks. It was addressed to me, dated 2 years after I'd graduated community college. A nonprofit in Atlanta offering me an entry-level job after a phone interview I barely remembered, because I'd been so stunned they'd even called. "We understand your family obligations make relocation difficult at this time," it read, "but we hope you'll consider us in the future if your situation changes." I had never told them relocation was difficult. I'd hung up from that phone interview excited and scared, then listened as my mother listed every reason Atlanta was a bad idea. Crime, cost of living, no one to help you if you have another episode. I'd emailed to say thanks but no thanks. Apparently she had emailed again for good measure, making sure they knew her poor fragile daughter wasn't to be pushed. Seeing that email printed and hidden away like a trophy made something in me go cold. This wasn't just fear. This was control. This was a woman so terrified of being left with the life she built that she was willing to smother anyone who tried to climb out of it. I stopped going down every weekend. I hired more outside help, using my own money and some of Grandma's. I told my mother, "If you fire the aides, I won't come down to replace them." She ranted, She called me heartless. She told my aunts I was too good for the family now. She also stopped firing the aides. Time did its thing. My dad slowly recovered some function. He'll never be the man who tossed me in the air in the backyard again, but he can walk with a cane, feed himself, tell me the same story 3 times in a row when I call. Josh is in his mid-20s now. He lives at home but has a day program and 2 support workers he likes. We text memes back and forth. I visit when I can stomach my mother's voice. A couple of months ago, we were sitting in the living room watching some home improvement show and he said totally casually, "Do you ever wish you'd gone to that big college you wanted?" I blinked. "You knew about that?" I asked. He shrugged, shifting in his chair. "Mom and Dad used to argue about it," he said. "At night. They thought I was asleep. Dad said you deserved a chance," Mom said. "And leave me here to do everything? Over my dead body." He paused, looked at me. "I'm sorry," he added. "It's not your fault," I said, but my throat was tight. "None of this was your fault." "I know," he said. "But you're the one who got stuck." For me, that landed like a stone, because that's how my mother would tell it. That I sacrificed for him. That I gave up dreams for family. She'd never admit she'd built the tracks. She'd never admit she enjoyed the power of being the benevolent jailer. I moved states last year. Took a job at a university a few hours away, the kind of place that would have thrilled 17-year-old me. It's not UNC, but the campus smells the same in the fall. Cut grass and coffee and possibility. I'm the oldest person in my grad program by a mile, starting a counseling degree at 39, but I love it in a way I don't think I could have at 18. I pay my own rent on time every month. I check my own mail. Every acceptance letter, every bill, every piece of junk with my name on it comes straight to me. Sometimes I hold envelopes for a second longer than necessary before I open them, just to remind myself that the choice is mine. My mother says I abandoned them. She tells anyone who will listen at church that her daughter ran off and left her disabled brother and sick father so she could go be important somewhere else. She leaves out that I pay for half of Josh's support worker hours. She leaves out the letters. She leaves out the email trail that shows how many times she called people on my behalf to make me seem less capable than I was. She leaves out the box in the attic where she buried the proof that I had options. Some nights, usually when I'm up late writing papers and my hands ache from typing, and I think about how tired I'll be for my shift at the campus counseling center the next morning, guilt hits like a wave. I see my mother lifting my dad into bed, scowling at the home health aide for not doing it right. I see Josh asking where I am. I hear her voice in my head. "We gave up everything for you, and you couldn't give up one little dream for us?" And then I picture that stack of envelopes. All the lives I could have had, all the cities I could have lived in, all the versions of me that never got born because one person decided she knew better. I picture my 17-year-old self sitting on the porch steps, watching the mailbox, believing that silence meant she wasn't wanted. I picture the guidance counselor's face when he said, "I wish I'd done more." I don't know if I've forgiven my mother. Some days I think I have, in the sense that I don't walk around actively plotting revenge. Other days I feel a hot, bitter anger that scares me. I do know that I don't trust her. I haven't for a long time. I just finally have evidence to back up the feeling. She built a life where I was too indispensable to let go. Instead of raising me to stand on my own, she clipped my wings and then told everyone I was afraid of heights. So that's my story, internet strangers. I'm the daughter who thought she just wasn't smart or special enough to get into the school she dreamed about, who stayed in her dying hometown to take care of a disabled brother and aging grandparents because that was what good daughters do, who built a small, safe life she sometimes resented, and who finally discovered, almost 20 years later in a dusty attic, that she'd actually been accepted to multiple universities, offered scholarships and jobs, and that her mother had quietly intercepted and hidden those letters, called employers, and framed every closed door as God's will, when really it was her own fear of being left. Now, late in my 30s, I've finally left, started over in a new state, gone back to school, and put some boundaries in place. My parents and some relatives say I'm selfish, ungrateful, that I owe them the rest of my life because they gave up everything when I got stuck there after high school. I say they stole my choices and then guilt me for not being happy about the scraps. But I still lie awake some nights wondering if I'm the bad guy for leaving them to deal with the mess they helped create, even if I'm still helping from a distance with money and planning instead of my entire existence. If you were in my shoes, if you opened a box one day and realized your own mother had spent years hiding acceptance letters, scholarships, and job offers to keep you trapped as the built-in caregiver, and now she wants you to once again give up your shot at a different life to come home and take care of your parents, would you do what I did and finally leave, set boundaries, and build the future she tried to bury, even if it means being branded the selfish, abandoning child? Or would you stay, move back in, and keep sacrificing your own dreams for family because you feel like too much time has passed and you owe them that much after everything they've done and everything they've stolen?